Cup final day 1988, an unglamorous, generally unpopular Wimbledon came up against English football's mightiest force, the perennial league champions Liverpool. In front of 98,000 spectators and before 250 million television viewers, the Dons caused one of the greatest upsets in FA Cup history.
Here's Wise with the free kick. And it's in there! Sanchez has put Wimbledon ahead.
Lawrie Sanchez, relatively unknown to many at the time, was suddenly thrown into the limelight when he headed in Dennis Wise's free kick and won the cup. 30 years later, and after managerial stints with Wycombe Wanderers, Northern Ireland and Fulham, Football Up Close met up with Lawrie Sanchez at his home in Reading. As it happened, Wembley, all those years ago, was still very much on Sanchez's mind.
20 years ago, I remember it. I bought this house a week after the cup final. I thought I was on a roll, so I bought this house at auction. It's one of those. No, people just say when you score an FA Cup goal, you wake up every morning and think I scored a winning goal in the cup final. And I said, you don't. What happens is you get on with your life. You have your ups and downs in your life, and then come cup week, whatever it be, first round, second round, third round, or certainly the week of the final, somewhere phones you up and say, can you do a piece with us about your goal? I remember being reported at the time. I spoke to a journalist and he said, it won't be remembered. He won a great cup final and he won a particularly great goal. He said, people forget that. 20 years later, I've made a couple of TV programmes based on the back of it, and it made me more well known because of that. And I played 17 years as a player, the last 10 years at the top level, and my career's hanged on the peg of scored the winning goal in the cup final. Better players than me played in cup finals. Better players than me never scored a winning goal in a cup final. So to have that as the tag of my career, I'm quite happy to do that.
Lawrence Philip Sanchez was born to an Ecuadorian father and a Northern Irish mother. He made his debut for Reading at the age of 17, and after 7 years there, Sanchez moved to southwest London and Wimbledon FC, for whom he would play for the next 9 years. The Dons by then were already on the up, having been promoted to the second division. Lawrie Sanchez became part of the crazy gang at Wimbledon, with notable names like Vinnie Jones, John Fashanu, Dave Besant and Dennis Wise, amongst others, known for their eccentric behaviour and their outrageous practical jokes. The gang, as it was known, then catapulted the London club to the Old English First Division and grabbed the world's attention in that 1988 Cup final.
You arrived, and of course it was a team that was historically going to go from fourth to first. You were part of the last push, as it were, the goal that took it to the first, and an FA Cup final against Liverpool. Had to be something magical going on there. What was it?
I think we knew we were special. We knew that playing any team in the league we can compete. And I've managed now in the Premier League, and sometimes you look at your players and you think they don't believe they can compete with the best teams. We went in our first season and won at Anfield. We won at Old Trafford. First season in the league. People are writing fantastic things about Hull, which is great at this moment in time. We did that and more, and we sustained it for a whole season. Now, if Hull finish sixth, they'll have outdone what we've done. But the likelihood, is that they won't finish sixth. If they win the cup final next year, that will do it. But we did those things. I think we realised it was a very strong dressing room. You had to be a strong character to live in that dressing room. And what players have subsequently done with the rest of their life shows what strong characters they were.
The success of that famous FA Cup final made the world sit up and take notice of this motley crew. Their playing style was often, in the eyes of others, condemned as being basic and unsophisticated. So did the victory in that cup final earn Wimbledon respect?
Well, talking about the programme, they did a programme, Clash of the Titans, and they did, Mansell and Prost, Coe and Over. This series of BBC did it, and they did it Wimbledon versus Liverpool about that cup final. And Alan Hansen famously said, it should never be under the Clash of the Titans because Wimbledon were never Titans. So it stuck in their claw at the time. It's the final that he'll be remembered for, and the Liverpool people remember. I think thereafter we got credit. I think Fash went on to play for England, Dave went on to play for England, Dennis Wise went on to play for England, Andy Thorne was in England under 21 international, Vinnie captained Wales, I went to play for Northern Ireland. You go through the team, thereafter people realised we were winners. And the other aspect of that is that people went for record transfer fees. Dave was the richest goalkeeper in the world at one stage. He's 750,000. Thorney went as the most expensive centre-half when he went to Newcastle. People like Terry Phelan went as the most expensive left-back in the world at the time. And subsequent players like John Scales was the most expensive centre-half in the world. Keith Curle was the most expensive centre-half in the world. So when they went, players left Wimbledon for world record fees. And I think that was on the basis of what we achieved in that cup final. It was only subsequently people realised perhaps we weren't too bad.
Weren't too bad might be an understatement. That team, after all, did beat one of the greatest ever English clubs. Coming up after the break, Lawrie Sanchez as manager, and again, it was a case of leading a small team to the big time.
Most crucially of all, we started to get results. I think the England game was a massive turning point for us.
Lawrie Sanchez moved from Wimbledon to Swindon Town in 1993, but his playing days were almost at an end, and management was the next step. Starting off as a player-manager, Sanchez learned the ropes and made a name for himself when he guided relegation-threatened Wycombe Wanderers, with only 18 games left in the season, to safety in Division 2. The team eventually finished 12th in the table, and the fans were flocking back to Adams Park. The following year, they followed Sanchez and his team on a fairy-tale FA Cup run, which took Wycombe to within one game of Wembley. The underdogs had brushed aside Premiership side Leicester City in the 2001 quarter-final to set up a semi-final against, guess who? Mighty Liverpool. Wycombe gave a great account of themselves before succumbing at Villa Park, but not before they earned the respect of their peers. A subsequent failure to earn promotion and the collapse of vital TV deals for the league sounded the death knell for Sanchez's time at the club. It was a very disappointing end to his first real taste of management, and Sanchez felt deeply aggrieved by the way things ended.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was naive at the time. I thought that given time you could build a club up, you'd be supported. I mean, we got to this semi-final, 2001, played Liverpool in the semi-final, held them for 78 minutes, I think, before they brought on Heskey, Gerrard, and someone else who 3 England internationals came off the field to and you've got to remember they got the team in there. Fowler and Owen played up front. Heskey came off the bench, Gerrard came off the bench, McAllister was in midfield. They had a fantastic team, and we were. I famously said at the time, I think that Liverpool, one of the biggest teams in the world, we weren't even the biggest team in our own county. So that was a fantastic, and on the back of that, we generated some money. I thought we had a good chance of getting Wycombe perhaps into Div 1, as was then Championship now. Unfortunately, Granada collapsed, the on-digital TV deal collapsed and hit financial teams, and suddenly from thinking that we could splash out and have a go, we subsequently had to cut wage bills. And at that time as well, you think the teams like Reading were in our league, who are now in the Premier League, the QPRs who went on. There was a lot of big teams in our league. That Wigan were in the league at the time, who were on their way to the Premier League. There was a lot of teams that shouldn't have been in that division at the time. We couldn't compete. Subsequently, with a lot of cash, 5 years later, 2 years after the cup final, you were told your time is up. And I found that, 5 years at a club, I was a long-serving manager then, and I found that, devastating is the wrong word, but I found it made me think about, there isn't loyalty. People say there isn't loyalty. You hope there is, but there isn't. And you do think, well, you've got to watch that next time round.
In February 2004, the magician was called upon to produce the unexpected once again. This time it was a forlorn Northern Ireland national team, which had gone 1,300 minutes without scoring, was ranked 124th in the world, and hadn't won a game for nearly 3 years. Sanchez not only masterminded the defeat of England in a World Cup qualifying match a year later, he steered the Irish to victories over European giants such as Spain and Sweden, and walked away with a draw against Portugal. The team's ranking improved tremendously, leaping to 27th in the world. And by the time Sanchez left, Northern Ireland were top of the Euro 2008 qualifying group, ahead of Spain, by the way. His success, he says, came from his ability to organise and especially to motivate the team.
Laid down a system of players, got rid of the players that didn't want to do it. The other players bought into it, and most crucially of all, we started to get results. I think the England game was a massive turning point for us. Well, Sven only lost one qualifier, so they weren't bad in his tenure at England. So I'd like to think it was more about us. I mean, we did that, came back to England. I stayed in Northern Ireland that night, fantastic night. I mean, they were dancing on both sides of the community that night, which was unbelievable. Reading all about how good we are and how great night and what we'd done and David Healy's goal and all that. Then I came back to England and all I read in English papers were how bad England were. and I did Football Focus. It was all about Mark Lawrence and attacking Sven, and I'm sat there next to him thinking, they've only lost one qualifier and we beat them, and we deserved to beat them on the night. And it was just one of those nights when, nevertheless, another qualifier finished top of the group. I think they were the best qualifiers for that World Cup.
Although Northern Ireland had been considered the underdogs, that victory over England was hailed as a huge achievement in Belfast. The English press and media, on the other hand, didn't give Sanchez and his boys enough credit.
I don't think in this country we've got the credit for it. I don't think people realise what an achievement it was. I mean, it was the first time in 97 years. I mean, Malcolm Brodie, the doyen of Northern Ireland football, had been to every World Cup since -- had never seen England beaten in Belfast. And he's covering, so it's a hell of an achievement to do that. But more importantly, and I think the most important thing for myself and the team was the team thought, well, we can do stuff now. And we can go on and do stuff. And on the back of that, as I say, we were top of the qualifying group for the next campaign.
One Northern Ireland player who emerged as a hero under Lawrie Sanchez was David Healy, who was then playing for Leeds United. His first ever hat-trick gave Northern Ireland a historic win over Euro 2008's eventual champion Spain. And Healy's eventual 13-goal haul made him the highest ever goalscorer in a Euro Championship qualifying campaign.
13 goals in a qualifying campaign that had Torres, Villa, Raul, Ibrahimovic in the same group, playing for Sweden and Spain. And you're not telling me they got more opportunities to score goals than he did, and he outscored all four of them put together. We played a formation that suited him. We got wingers on the pitch, Gillespie, in particular. We got a big front man up front with him, Kyle Lafferty, James Quinn at the beginning, but Kyle Lafferty later on, and we got him service in the box. An indication, the first game we lost, people forget we lost 3-0 to Iceland, and everybody's saying this is rubbish, blah, 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 let's sack the manager, get rid of the players, blah. And in that game, in 90 minutes, we entered their penalty box 90 times. Although we lost 3-0, we entered their penalty box 90 times. And it is purely entering the penalty box. Football is about entering the penalty box. How you enter it, people have different ways of doing it, but the more you enter it, the more chance you've got of scoring. We enter the penalty box an awful lot of times, and if you do that enough times, then David Healy, given chances, is as good a finisher as you will see.
Lawrie Sanchez had certainly raised the standing of Northern Ireland and caused the rest of Europe to sit up and take notice. But his success also caught the eye of several Premiership clubs, one especially. Fulham, in the midst of a relegation battle, were in dire need of a revival. After sacking then-manager Chris Coleman, owner Mohamed Al Fayed came knocking at Sanchez's door. Coming up after the break, Sanchez was always going to say yes, but it was a decision which he may in some parts have regretted.
If I have one regret in my footballing career, it's that I wasn't strong enough and didn't say that.